In terms of the economic agenda, let me just say the sticker shock about the size of the packages in fiscal terms is quite large. We are talking about several percent of GDP in a period where previously a couple percent of GDP was seen as a very large package. That said, the world has changed. Interest rates have been very low for a very long time. The needs in dealing with the pandemic are clearly acute and temporary. And so there is a strong case to be made that this package is reasonably responsible. The interesting question is more the second bill, which will be the budget bill that will come sometime in February. And how much of that goes into infrastructure spending on a sustained basis, how much green effort there is, subsidies for new green industries and green technology is probably the biggest piece of it. As already mentioned, there's probably not going to be any tax increases. This is a point going forward that will be difficult between US and Europe because absent a serious carbon price and carbon tax, Europe and some other countries are moving much further, much faster on decarbonization than the US. And despite Biden's genuine intent to do more, there will be trade adjustment issues between them. The immigration package, the size of it and scope, not so much in money terms, but in ambition, took me a bit by surprise. Mr. Schaefer may want to comment on that. President Biden clearly had conviction about immigration and made commitments, but his history was not that was a major issue for him. And of all the things he could have chosen to, in a sense, attach to the stimulus package, that he's sending a signal on immigration is very big. From an economic point of view, it's wonderful. There is no question that, except for some minimal localized disruptions that can be managed, increasing immigration is good on all economic fronts, good for fiscal sustainability, good for productivity, good for future labor supply and health of the society. Obviously, Italy and other countries in the Med have been dealing with this issue for some time. The US has to deal with this in foreign policy terms as well, dealing with Central America and Mexico, as well as Asia. I'm very interested in what Charlie Kupchan sees, how this fits into foreign policy. But from an economic point of view, it's a no-brainer. The question is politically, it's a shock how ambitious, to me at least, it's a shock how ambitious this is. We're talking about millions of people, amnesty and a path to citizenship rather than just the dreamers or the young people, and being more humane on refugees. Agenda of ambition is fighting two issues. It's not fighting a fiscal constraint right now, and that will not be the issue. The ambitious economic agenda is fighting how much can be done through executive action or 50+1 votes versus 60 votes in the Senate. And it will be extremely difficult to change in a lasting way the tax code or the budget without legislation. And so there is, through 2022 at least, some limit on what can be done. The second thing which they're fighting is, of course, the pandemic. And I give the Biden team credit because they have, in substance, clearly prioritized this and are putting everything on that issue. And there is no trade-off, as Italy has learned to its regret and the US has learned to its regret, between controlling the virus and getting the economy back. And so the reality-based actions, as we're seeing very symbolically in the inaugural with people wearing masks and separating and being tested, are going to matter a lot. The third point, though, which gets into things that I know Aspen Italia cares about and should care about, and which I hope the Biden administration will care about, is obviously the international side. Patrick Schaefer will say something about trade. The bottom line is that, as we've seen with the EU deal on Chinese investment, that and many other things, that the world has moved on. The US internationalism in the second term of Obama failed to deliver on a number of fronts, largely due to obstreperous obstruction by the Republicans in the Senate, but that was the reality. We did not deliver on the IMF and quotas and terms. We did not deliver on development. We did not deliver on the WTO. And when we come back to the table now, even if the Biden administration wants to do everything right, it is legitimate for the rest of the world to say, how credible is any commitment if you can't get it through Congress or if it can be reversed in 2 to 4 years? And that is particularly on climate change, but also on other issues is where the real action is going to have to be. Minimum wage. So the proposal is very simple to get the federal minimum wage up to $15 an hour. And this is a legitimate point of debate. The question is, what's the right number and the right pace to do that? There is no question that the minimum wage has fallen way behind as a share of national income or average income, fallen way behind versus expenses. But this could be close to a doubling of the minimum wage. And so for some states, including Massachusetts, California, District of Columbia, which is not a state, but should be, there is already a move to raise the wage significantly, as well as in certain metropolitan areas like Seattle. And the economics of it, like many things, is it's a mix. It tends to destroy a small number of very low wage jobs. It tends to not hugely affect the rate of job growth one way or the other. It tends to increase the wages of a lot of people, but disproportionately people in the, say, the 10th to 25th percentile rather than the 0 to 10th percentile. And it doesn't tend to put businesses out of business. I mean, so the evidence is just it's a blend, and it depends on very local conditions. What's the balance of job creation versus wage getting more money to the workers? There is an argument to be made in pure economics that what you really would prefer is what's called the earned income tax credit, which is a negative income tax that people work, and if they're earning below a certain wage or a certain amount of money, then they get it back from the government directly. And in pure economics, that's probably a little better. We already have that, and there's efforts to expand that. Realistically, this is going to attract a huge amount of fuss and noise. It's very important symbolically. It may be helpful for working bargaining power. Probably the wisest thing to do would be to phase in the $15 over a long period of several years, not several, but 4 or 5 years, starting at, say, 10, or having some variability across the country, which is contrary to the spirit of it, but would diminish some of the economic effects, because there are states where $15 is close to the median wage, and so the employment effects would likely be bigger. But anyway, this is something where the economists' evidence has shown that in a lot of places, the effect is nil or mildly positive, and there are specific places where it's negative. And again, the question is, if Biden is doing a lot of things by executive order and has other positive agenda and chooses to put political emphasis on this, okay.